Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on VCTV. Again, this is LATOKEN. It's a platform by LATOKEN, and today we're talking about blockchain in health, treatment, diagnostics, and medication. So the whole healthcare sector there. We're trying to sum it up in today's show. And before we start, just a reminder, if you're watching us from YouTube, again, do just click like and subscribe right down there. And if you're on our main page itself, do remember we have multiple shows in the week, in the month. Check out the schedules, look at our investor profiles. It's all there. And on today's panel, we have some of those investors as well. So let me just quickly start by perhaps letting them introduce themselves. Before that, I am Terence, and over to you, Karthik.
Hi, thank you so much, Terence. And as I continue counting every time, this is episode number 17. And
Nice.
pleasure being around once again on a Friday afternoon. Interestingly, last time around, one of the participants who presented a pitch has connected with me, and it's been great serving him. So I expect that a lot of viewers who are watching this and a lot of startup entrepreneurs who are watching this, in case they want to reach out, they can absolutely reach out to us. All the help will be provided. To give you a quick background, I represent a large retail organization. I represent interest in healthcare from a professional point of view, from an investor point of view, and from a VC panel or VC front end point of view. And we've been seeing a lot of development. Pre-pandemic, there was a lot of development. Post-pandemic, it's accelerated to an unprecedented level into all possible directions. So I think during the course of the day, I would be touching upon 3 to 4 different segments where a lot of investments have started coming in and where the pivots have changed completely from the way we were evaluating it around a year ago to where we evaluate it now. I think there's a massive shift.
Mm.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for that, Karthik. And you're right in saying that, and we are definitely going to touch upon that. Anuj, over to you. Quickly introduce yourself and what you represent there.
Thanks, mate. So, introducing myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 3 startups in the last 10 years. Presently, working as the founder for Yellow Sapphire Technologies and Atotum. Uh, I'm also an international partner at World Business Angel Forum, which is a G20 initiative to promote global financial inclusivity and entrepreneurship across the world. I'm also working with iAngels in Israel for some angel investments, along with a family fund based off of Buffalo, New York. Uh, with regard to healthcare, I'm developer turn startup founder, if I may say so. During this whole COVID situation, we have had a chance to work with a lot of hospitals, which gave us insights into some of the opportunities that are available in the market, and that's what led us to start uh, a totem and bring about some change in the sector. So yeah, look forward to a great discussion ahead and then sharing more thoughts about it.
Thank you, Anuj. Gary, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Terence. How are you today?
Very well, Gary. Let the audience know. Who is
Yeah,
Gary?
I feel like the Oracle of Delphi. Yes. So anyhow, my name's Gary Fowler, and I'm an investor and serial entrepreneur. I've done 16 companies, been involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion about 16 months ago. And Eva.ai is a company I co-founded with a billionaire from Russia who's located in Silicon Valley. That company is now near unicorn status. And I love AI. I write a lot about it. I just published an article actually on AI and cybersecurity in Forbes. Just love it. So I've got written about 90 articles on AI just in the last year, and I've got like 3 coming out next week. So write a lot, love it. I am the CEO and co-founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, and we curate company using Silicon Valley support to take them out for everything from IPOs, which we've done one on NASDAQ, to M&A, to raising money. So that's us, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, Gary. And we're definitely going to be touching a little bit on AI and its contribution within the whole healthcare ecosystem. To kind of start things off, again, as the title suggests, we're looking at blockchain in the whole healthcare system. We're talking about treatments, diagnostic, medication. Uh, it goes to show that it's becoming more personalized. It's that version of the healthcare that we are getting now compared to what our previous generation got. So let's kind of start this off and talk about new developments, perhaps, in the whole space itself. Karthik, perhaps you can go with this one first.
Yeah. So as I was telling you before the show began, there has been a development in the healthcare space, especially in the Middle East, the region that I represent, with insurance democratization happening in the last 7-8 years, when being a mandatory healthcare tool. I think there has been a lot of development, but all the development was primarily around the primary surgical as well as the diagnostic route, which means developments in robotics, development in surgical procedures, development in scientific evolutions in terms of a particular therapy was being built. But post pandemic, the need to have bed space, the need to have therapeutic procedures, the need to have different routes to treatment and movement from purely a curative to preventive to lifestyle to wellness route has accelerated a lot of change. Today, we see developments as far fetched in the field of medical transcription or in data records using blockchain, or primarily in spaces like wearables, which is building into a lot of health and wellness, or even into telemedicine, cyber medicine, or into robotics using a lot of AR and VR, or even into surgical procedures with laparoscopy coming in through a lot of imaging and radiation. One of the big beneficiaries in post pandemic has been a lot of alternative and consultative medicine or alternate treatment therapies, typically Unani, homeopathy, Ayurveda, or even the hijama treatment that comes in, which requires a very deep understanding of a patient's life cycle, at least a 10 to 15-year understanding of what the patient has been through in his particular way of living. And hence, a lot of blockchain based data modules have started coming into play. But I would still say it's a very early stage in this space. A lot of developments in blockchain needs to be done. But with COVID opening up doors for more investments, I think the next 6 to 7 years are going to see a lot of investments. We see a lot of businesses, especially coming out from subcontinent, developing the practices here. We see large hospital chains evolving and investing money into smaller pockets or smaller nodules of treatment, specializing in a lot of emergency treatment protocols, ORs, a lot of ETs, a lot of trauma centers are getting built with tele support or with heli support, and a lot of medical support that Africa as a continent used to lack is now being provided through cyber medicine from Middle East. So I think overall, last 12 months, if I would have noticed, I would have seen at least around 27 to 30 cases, and we've funded at least 7 out of them, all the way going up to around 24 billion, 22 million, sorry, as an overall ticket.
Nice. That's good numbers there, actually, and we're definitely going to move into the companies and perhaps look into some examples later on the show. Anuj, over to you with this one. What are you seeing in terms of the new developments out there within this whole healthcare space? I know it's a big space, but let's try to break it down.
So, when we are talking about healthcare, it's a complicated sector, if I may say so simply. Uh, as engineers, we often tend to ignore uh, how medicine works and how diagnostics and other healthcare tools are working. Uh, this the past few weeks, one of the things that I'm noticing right now is a lot more top tier engineers coming into healthcare, bringing in more data analytics tool. Uh, However, one of the reasons why I'm not too excited about any of those products is because one of the key focus that all of them are missing is it is keeping the user as the central focus. One good example would be this company that just got funded. It's founded by all three top IIT guys. Uh, I checked their website. The product looks great, but the product feature is that once you get your blood works done or your diagnostic works done, you send them your report and they create an intelligent summary of sort telling you if your bone density is improving, or if your thyroid condition is improving, or if your heart condition is improving or deteriorating. And here's the biggest flaw that I see in this entire concept, which they as engineer have failed to notice or acknowledge. When a user goes for diagnostic, they don't go for all tests at the same time. Simple as that. So if someone has a chronic condition, be it hypothyroidism, they're probably going to get their thyroid tested on a regular basis, but they are not going to get their cardiac test, bone density test, all of that done with it. For one simple reason, tests are expensive. You don't want to spend money where you don't have to. And that's the case with a lot of other companies as well. There's a sudden rise in telemedicine where a lot of companies are coming in right now and focusing upon outpatients and remote patients. So setting up outpatient departments where doctor can create their prescriptions while being socially distanced, and then you can grab it from a printer. Now, of course, while this will work great in a COVID era where there are a lot less patients that are coming in, even at top tier government hospitals and then private hospitals in India, they are running at 40% of the capacity right now. Some of the hospitals which used to see 10,000 patients a day have gone down to just seeing 3,000 patients a day. And in that era where the workload on doctors have been reduced significantly, where a doctor who would usually go through 100 or 120 odd patients in a 6-hour shift has now come down to probably 30 or 35 odd patients. Right now, for them, it's much more easier to type everything and then have a printed prescription given out to them. But as the vaccine starts to roll out, as things go back to the old normal that we knew, and the outpatients department and those areas would start to see that level of footfall again, it would not again make sense. Telemedicine is not a new product. There have been a number of companies that I've seen over the last 7 or 8 years that have developed that product with the vision that most company would pitch in. Oh, we want to take it to a remote area. We want to take it to a village where there is lack of doctors, and have user interact with it and offer healthcare to them. But one of the, again, key factors that none of those companies have worked has been because when you're doing that, you're ignoring the what's next part. Once you have the diagnostic, what's next? So until and unless new companies come in with keeping the user in mind, keeping the doctors in mind, taking a design thinking approach and then thinking from all sides of the aisle and creating a holistic solution, it's still going to be a difficult situation where over the course of next 1 or 2 years, you're going to see some big companies that were making a lot of buzz start to go down, start to merge, and then just go back into survival mode. So
that's fair. Yeah. I mean, there is the pros and cons, I guess, on that part alone. But I think the way we look at it is probably different now. Gary, how are we reframing the whole industry at the moment? Or what are interesting new developments that you're seeing within this space?
I mean, remember, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania, so I grew up in a little tiny village. So I keep it simple. So there's 3 things that we look at, right? We're looking at transparency, for the blockchain, the data security and integrity, and decentralization. So the net is, why is it important? In fact, I just did a presentation to the top pharmaceutical companies in Europe a couple of weeks ago. They were doing a report on blockchain and artificial intelligence. So I had some, it was an in-depth discussion about, and that's another show, but it was quite interesting. So, but let's look at where we are in terms of the blockchain. So what's it all about? It's, we need to share and collaborate on data, patient, payer, provider data, and especially now during the time of COVID. I mean, think about how much, I mean, I don't know what it's like now, Terrence, in Singapore or India, but I mean, in California, it's really bad with this COVID, right? We're locked down with curfews and restricted movements and all that. So, I mean, we've now seen the vulnerabilities of the system and the fragmented nature of the existing health management information systems. I mean, and what it does is really hampers this interprofessional interaction. So what we need to do is we need to increase that. So companies are out there today like Humana, they're testing blockchain to be able to allow them to share patient and provider data in a very cost efficient way. And it's all about sharing now. I mean, when I had that discussion a few weeks ago with the pharmaceutical companies, their whole idea was how can we develop these drugs faster? I mean, and my particular piece was, doing drug discovery using artificial intelligence for modeling rather than using bench time. And I mean, that's it. So, and then you add quantum computers on top of that and it changes everything. So that's door number one. And then at the same time, what are some of the other issues? Well, if I'm a doctor in India, I'm a doctor in the US, I'm a doctor in Singapore, wherever, how can I exchange my credentials to show you who I am and have those credentials validated? So companies are out there. There's Hashid Health. They're developing a blockchain exchange for speeding up the credentials, right? Who you are, what you have, and how you can help. So it allows hospitals and private practices to leverage it so that they can verify, practitioners' information, especially again today in a time of COVID. Then think about smart contracts in healthcare, right? So this is really, we're building it to be able to build the trust between the stakeholders, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, so that we understand, we get what we want. And, drug makers and health buyers can write and code contracts for it to go negotiate pricing, right? For prescription drugs, that kind of thing. And it's all about verification. It's all about how, I look at it, technology is about efficiency and effectiveness. So this allows, healthcare providers all kinds of capabilities to use blockchain-based contracts with payers. Net, it's hard to get paid if you're a doctor, right? To expedite the compensation. Why should they wait 3 months to get paid? So, and then to be able to accurately, one of the other challenges, doctors may not be the best business folks in the world, to be able to have a record of what was performed and when I need to get paid. And then the other thing is, think about it, counterfeit drugs are a huge problem worldwide today. So creating a distributed ledger to track prescription drugs, I mean, it's critically important. And I mean, it's one of the big problems. I mean, we're finding, I lived in Russia for quite some time. It's like the Forrest Gump approach. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, except it's prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Viagra. Forget about it. So, so that's really interesting because this blockchain in this sense allows pharma operations to be able to interoperate, to be able to monitor the stakeholders and regulators. So, I mean, this is really important. So it's one of the challenges worldwide. And when I look at these systems, I mean, what I see happening right now, especially because of the digital transformation, is countries and companies working together to be able to solve these complex problems. Look what the COVID in a sense is, one of the worst things that's happened since, in terms of the healthcare situation since 1918 in the Spanish flu. But if you look, by the way, if you look at the picture of the Spanish flu in 1918, you'll see soccer games and football games with people with masks on. It wasn't that much different, other than we can still communicate using now Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So blockchain is transforming the healthcare space in a whole lot of different ways. So the stakeholders, the doctors, the hospitals, the drug manufacturers, are looking at ways that they can leverage the technology in all kinds of different situations so they can reduce costs, enhance the quality of the care, and of course, it's all about, they need to boost their profits, right? And again, that's efficiency and effectiveness. So, I would look at, where we are. We're looking at things like smart contracts, decentralized credentials exchanges, distributed ledgers, for the supply chain to be able to verify that I'm getting what I want or need, right? And it's not going to kill me. And if you're if you're a risk management company on the insurance side, these are things that are wanted changes, because the last thing they need is liability, that they get some fake drugs in a hospital and it ends up killing a patient. They got lawsuits galore to be able to solve it. So it's an exciting time, right? And I have investments or co-founded some healthcare tech companies myself that are one out of Stanford University, actually, my partner and I, Derek. So, I mean, I'm excited about it. But again, people haven't figured it out. When I had that conversation with the pharmaceutical companies, I understood directly that here are some of the top companies in Europe. And, I mean, we're talking about like the keep it simple stuff, right? It's like many of these pharmaceutical companies should be out there using things like artificial intelligence and blockchain, especially today. I mean, why the hell would you use bench time, with a MD, PhD when you can actually do the modeling on the computer? I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that I spent probably 2 hours talking about that to this group of experts.
Yeah, I think you're right. And kind of riding on to that point as well, I think it's not just the whole typical healthcare provider names. You're talking about lots of tech companies coming in the ecosystem as well. I mean, we're seeing Apple, just a giant on its own, coming in with their wearables, and the growth of that alone. It seems like we all want the data more than taking care of the patients. I don't know. You tell me. What do you think, Karthik? Are we after the data, or are we after keeping the people healthy?
It works both ways, Terence. I have seen both the sides of the ecosystem. One side is people are hungry for data. Insurance companies are slicing the entire blockchain in a manner that we never thought they would. Everybody finds a way out of a pie for themselves, and insurance companies have found. I'll come to it as a point number two. Carrying on to what Gary is saying, uh, the Spanish flu of 1920, or the Ebola outbreak, or the plague outbreak, or the outbreak of H1N1, H1N5, all of them were late realizations after we started seeing casualties mounting. The current set of algorithms, specifically on AI, on collaborative filtering, that is being built through a lot of engines, typically based on what Amazon used to use. And Amazon used it to recommend businesses, but now somebody is using it to build algorithms on this platform, is to build trends around healthcare data of a particular geography, collectively forecasting that the concentration of a particular strain or of a particular ailment, of a particular occurrence in a geography manifests itself into an epidemic coming out in a region, forewarning a lot of ancillary government statutory bodies to make sure that the damage control measures can be taken far more effectively. Ebola outbreak, we realized only after around 300,000 people lost their lives. The plague in India, we realized only after 18 districts were completely locked down for 20, 25 days. This COVID, we realized only when the world was locked down. But now, with a certain degree of accuracy, one can figure out as to what level of epidemic and what grade of sensitivity that is going to be brought into this place. That's part A of the argument. Part B of the argument, and I would look at the way insurance companies are slicing this data with a very decentralized and accurate patient history. Insurance companies are riding on the cost per patient and recurrence of an ailment or recurrence of a therapy per patient, which means they are reducing all the necessary malpractices in the healthcare sector that medical practitioners were recommending because of lack of transparency or lack of availability of data. And more importantly, they are now building an arsenal of therapies available to counter a medical practitioner's claim. So let's say I go to a go to a doctor with a gastric reflux, and a doctor recommends cancer medication, basis collaborative filtering or basis the blockchain sliced vertically or horizontally, the insurance companies are now in a position to go back saying these symptoms historically have had these patients with these demographics and have been cured in this particular manner. So there are 4 different alternate therapies available. One doesn't need to go through a surgical procedure. So it drastically brings down the entire medical spend. Coming back to the data in the wearable space, obviously Apple is one large example that we know, but Google took over Fitbit only primarily to get patient and patient demographics and patient data and lifestyle data to be merged into their overall algorithm. So yes, data continues to be a prime bearer in this entire space.
Yeah, yeah. Anuj, do you agree with that? Are we talking just solely about predictive algorithms, data, or are we actually healing the world? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, if I'm being honest here, you have the AI grandmaster himself with us. He would be the better
What
person
are
to
you
answer
talking
this.
about? It must be perfect.
Of course not, Gary.
Oh, no, it's Carol.
Guys, it's me. Come on.
Oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
Okay. Go ahead, Anuj.
But yeah, addressing your question, mate. See, one of the key changes about healthcare in 21st century versus any other time in human history is the presence of data. Uh, let's not forget that for the first time when cholera was discovered, it was discovered by using simple data analytics where a person would go on to area where there's a cholera outbreak and figure out where it's coming from. It's only when they identified some key pointers, like finding a needle in a haystack, that, oh, these water pumps are the common factor in all those outbreaks. That's how they identify it. That's how they discovered it. And now take that into the modern world. You have that same models, that same kind of work being simply done through computers and AI. Uh, when as and when more people digitize their health records, because as of right now, one of the key factors in the medical industry is the lack of digitization of health records, the lack of proper medical history. Uh, there are countries in Southeast Asia where tuberculosis is still an issue. That's still an issue in Africa. And anyone who has recovered from tuberculosis develops calcifications in their lungs, which over the course of next 15 or 18 years can rupture and cause internal bleeding within the lungs. Hence, they are always at a high risk. However, if you take those same areas into consideration when any one of those goes to a doctor, and if they're going with a pulmonary issue with probably an H1N1, not taking COVID into account, but just an H1N1, and if a doctor asks, do you have any history? If they forget to mention that that tuberculosis diagnosis, they are practically surrendering to hemoptysis as they recover. They are going to be coughing out blood. They are going to go through a longer recovery period. So these kinds of factors, these kinds of identification metrics are very important. And it's only when you deploy these, only once you have data that's digitized from your time of birth, all your vaccination records, any major medical illness, any surgery, all of that has been plotted down digitally and can be accessed, is when a model can actually identify that, all right, these are the common factors between some unfortunate death or any unforeseen medical condition. So AI is definitely the next big thing. I mean, like I said, the grandmaster is here himself, so I'll let him I'll let him explain to us what happens when 1.3 billion people in India have all their health records digitized. Enlighten us, master.
Wait,
Oh, yes.
I have a way to kind of put this question across. Gary, this one is definitely for you. Now, I have personally played around with, like, say, a bunch of data. Just looking at perspective of e-commerce and making profits and such, I can include my biasness in this data. and I can target a certain group of people to not only give them the best of treatment or to only offer them a certain elitist privilege. What about the rest? If everyone just skews the data differently, what about the common citizens and societies? Can they benefit from the current developments of AI or the people messing with the data itself?
Well, I mean, in what sense? Are you talking about drug discovery, or I mean, there's all
Yeah,
kinds
in
of
terms
different.
in terms
I mean,
of
the
discovery, in
situation of
terms of
drug
treatment.
discovery, it's like keep it simple, right? It's
Mm,
very simple. So in drug discovery, they're using artificial intelligence today to be able to not have bench time, right? The big thing with drug companies today is bench time. Well, by that I mean actually having those PhD, MDs at the bench doing
mm,
the research to check about the interactions and how it would work. So what they're using the AI for is modeling to be able to speed up and this is really the trend. So uh, you're going to have bias. The key is how wide are your training sets you're going to have.
mm,
And there are some biases, but at the same time, again, I'm a country boy, right? If we don't try something, there's nothing's going to happen, right? I remember one time a billionaire friend of mine said to me, I had a question, and I said, "Tell me about entrepreneurship." And I
mm.
said, "How do you make decisions?" He said, "Give me a coin." I said, "Okay." I gave him a coin. He said, "I'm going to flip it up in the air." And I said, "Okay, great." He said, "Heads or tails?" And I said, "Heads." He said, "You got it." He said, "And this is a lesson for you." He said, "If you wouldn't have tried, you'd never have a chance to win. You had 50% shot of winning." So part of it is we need to, if we start going down through and coming up with reasons why not, we're never going to figure out anything. So we got to get the hell out and start moving forward. We got a lot of things. Everything's converging together, Terrence.
Mm,
Literally. I mean, if you look at, so I'm writing a lot about AI now and quantum computing, and I mean, our data's coming together, our world's coming together. This whole digital transformation with COVID has, I remember 5 years ago when I was one of the first Zoom users. And Pete, my friend said, "Oh, I'm not going to use this stuff. Why would I do this? I got Skype." Well, guess what? This is a platform for us to stay connected as human beings. And it's allowed us to be anywhere at any time, whenever we want. Here it is 5:30 in the morning. I'm in Palm Beach in Florida right this second, not in California. And, we're all over the world together. So, um, in terms of artificial intelligence, there is going to be some bias, but we got to get out and get shit done. We need to discover these drugs, you know, across the board, climate change, space travel. I'm working on a lot of different areas with artificial intelligence and the implications. But drug discovery is a great hit. Patient information has to be secure, but able to have the blockchain to be able to help make it secure, and then artificial intelligence to speed it up is important, right? Now we have quantum computers coming into the mix that's going to change everything. Imagine a system. 4 companies today are using quantum computers, right? And doing the research. The quantum computer could be up to 100 million times faster than a conventional computer. To put it in perspective, a drug problem, drug discovery problem that could today take 10,000 years could take 100 seconds, to put it in perspective. So
right.
you're talking about massive changes. Our lives, I did a project at Stanford University a few years ago with top MBA students from Russia. I actually was asked to be an MBA professor, and I took it on for the summertime. I brought them over to Stanford University to meet with top professors there, top, guys that have sold several companies from 100, Joe Betts LaCroix. Um, and our project was living to 120, like really living to 120. And so it was called health extension. And so our world is fundamentally changed. All these developments are helping us to live longer. Things like the printing of body parts, pancreases, etc. All of it. Drug discovery is helping us to live longer. All kinds of other questions are coming out. Now we're talking about living to 150. And this is not far, far in the future. Within your lifetime, Terrence, your average lifespan will be well over 100, right? Well over 100. Because now with the DNA, you can understand exactly what kind of things you need to have, right?
Right.
And genetics, exactly what kind of drugs, what kind of problems you're going to have in the future, and to stop them before they become a challenge. And then being able to alter things, right? And from a DNA perspective, it's beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful world. So these are all converged. So what I'm really interested in is the convergence of everything. And what is the end result? The end result is we're going to live a lot longer than we are today. As long as we don't, again, I'm a simple guy, we don't get wrapped around the axle, like your bike when you get a string in the wheel. So as long as we don't get the string in the wheel or wire in the wheel and slow ourselves down, we need to move fast and use the lessons learned. COVID has given us we understand that all the technology in the world couldn't help us get toilet paper, right?
Oh, yes. That's a big debate on its own, actually.
Here we are, super sophisticated with quantum computers, and we can't get a roll of toilet paper. Now, what's wrong with that picture?
Correct. Kind of looking at some of the companies as well. Let's kind of talk about some of the companies. As we see, I mean, at least we here at LATOKEN, we keep seeing lots of startups coming in and applying a little bit of science and internet and branding themselves as cyber medicine companies. I mean, Karthik, what do you think of these new startups? And why just cyber medicine? Can we see something else, or what's your forecast here?
Give you an understanding, especially in the Middle East, in the last 24 to 36 months, we would have seen at least or funded 3 cyber medicine startups, primarily hosted by a group of doctors or medical practitioners from certain parts of the world, which started as more as a charity or more as a social cause, has become or has come in vogue primarily through either Arab Health, which is the region's largest healthcare expo happening in last 2 years. Cyber medicine has been at the center stage of Arab Health 2018 and 2019. 2020 was a failure. So if I were to look at cyber medicine and if we were to go into the history, Africa for a very for a very large period continued to depend on the Middle East for all its trading requirements, for all its monetary requirements, and for all its medical requirements. Now you see the lopsided healthcare development where the Middle East has one medical practitioner for around 6.5 to 7,000 residents. Africa continues to be at one medical practitioner, resident medical practitioner for 228,000 residents. You're talking about a 40 times skew, which is where there is a huge opportunity, and B, a lot of government funding from Africa is coming in terms of developing cyber medicine as a technology or as a practice, as well as building medical infrastructure. Recently, we funded a cyber medical or cyber medicine in the general medical as well as in non-surgical daycare procedures, hosted in Qatar, hosted in Bahrain, hosted in Dubai, taking care of around 8 countries. We've seen investments which started with around 300,000 as a seed and has gone up to a Series B funding. We just funded them around 6.4 million, if I recall right, in the month of September. The reason for this kind of growth is because what started with 300 patients, 400 patients a week on cyber medicine has grown to a whopping 27,000 patients with 400, 500 medical practitioners round the clock churning and providing treatment, time agnostic, location agnostic, course agnostic, with a well-built supply chain servicing medical requirements, either in terms of medicines or in terms of activities or in terms of peripherals that need to go into it. So cyber medicine is big, especially in non-surgical and non-invasive and non-critical care. Also, cyber medicine has a very different side to it, which again came in as a placebo. The way I look at it is, it has helped medical practitioners bridge a lot of learning gap, which used to be rampant, especially in this part of the world. Medical care until around 1980s, 1990s, or even early 2000 wasn't the most evolved in this part of the world, with a lot of practitioners coming in from either Central Europe or Middle East, the talent pool wasn't rich enough and had to depend primarily either on subcontinent or on Western Europe, primarily Britain and France, for the medical practitioners to come in with that quality of experience and provide the services. But cyber medicine now has bridged in, and today larger hospital chains like Saudi German Hospital, or for that matter, even Aster Group, or even the KIMS Group, which is the largest in Bahrain, actively subscribe to either through Boston Memorials or through NHS Medical, which is NHS offshoot, which is into cyber medicine, to provide healthcare services, supplementary healthcare or supplementary learning services to the practitioners to provide that kind of care. So it's bridging the gap at both the ends. And I see a lot more development in the cyber medicine, and we are very active in this space. We are actively, I would say, building a couple of startups in India and one startup in Philippines in this space as well, because these regions require a lot more support.
Nice, nice. And for those viewing in as well from wherever you are, remember we have our distinguished panel here today. And if you're into cyber medicine, so if you're coming up with something like that, just do give us a ring, drop us an email. That's how it works. We can bridge that connection with you. Anuj, kind of moving on to you as well. What are other areas that you're noticing, at least some focus, or what are some of the buzzwords that you're hearing?
I I mean, we are entering a world which we have seen in sci-fi movies. The first time when human genome was mapped, it was a pretty big deal, and then that led to a vision where everyone's genome could be mapped and then personalized medication could be developed. While of course that was a utopian fantasy, it is practically coming to a reality. There are more and more markers that are being identified at a rapid pace. The time it took us to map the entire genome versus what it takes us to do the same task now, it's mind blowing. So that personalization coming into healthcare is what's fascinating for me, not just in terms of personalized medicine, because while I think that would be key uh, for some really critical conditions like some form of cancer or some drug resistant infections, but I do see a surge coming in personalized care, which we are trying to do at Atom as well. Uh, Along with it, a rise in more planning going towards medical procedure, a rise in uh, making sure that anyone who's going under the knife, that the procedure is elective. It's well prepped up in advance, so that there are no surprise coming along. If someone has to, let's say, just get their appendix removed, it's better to make sure that you're constantly monitoring those things throughout your life, so that if your appendix is about to burst at any point in time, you know that well in advance and have it removed in an elective procedure rather than rushing to an ER when it's about to just burst. So that kind of proactive care, along with a more personalized approach, is what's exciting for me. I think that's where the industry is going to head for the next 4 or 5 decades.
Right, right. Gary, how about yourself? Post-COVID, using AI, what are some other areas that we're looking at the moment?
Well, I mean, like I said, the drug discovery has this COVID has made us deeply understand that we got to do things differently. So, I mean, it's critically important that the lessons learned. And I think, so one side we understand because of the fear of COVID. The other side is there's a lot of money to be made. you know, Pfizer's going to be making a lot of money. You know what I mean? A lot of money. So these kind of technologies are really critical for us to move forward. But I mean, think about it. The whole idea, I mean, the COVID from a telemedicine standpoint, chat box to be able to help patients. I mean, if you ask a year ago, you wouldn't get a doctor on a Zoom call with you, right? But today they're scared to death and they'll do it. So the whole thing's changed. The other thing is sharing information, being able to share information so that we can have a better opinion, using artificial intelligence for diagnosis, right? And to be able to say, I know there's a study at Stanford University and they're using computer vision on melanoma, and the effectiveness of their diagnosis, of the AI's diagnosis, was better than if you took 23 composite top dermatologists and for that melanoma. And the difference is it does it in seconds by just looking at it. So, I mean, these are the kind of things. And then what I'm really interested is, these nanobots that'll be able to go into your bloodstream and to be able to detect when, hey, listen, you got a problem. There's a stretched here in your aorta. Let's go in and we need to fix it. Okay. Now the system talks to another one. We need to build this valve. It sends it out to a printer to build a valve. I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but it's not that far off, right? It's really, we're close to it. Imagine having those kind of systems. But then we need cybersecurity to protect us, because the last thing we need is some nanobots going wild inside your body, Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that guy's got the nanobots,
That's a movie on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, that I can see it. Remember, I said I wasn't going to kill you. I lied.
Yeah.
Like an Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie, So
Yeah.
we gotta go down through, but these are the kind of things that are happening. So AI is going to help us in terms of diagnosis. AI is going to help us in terms of drug discovery, and it is helping us. So I encourage the startups that are out there. I love AI. I love quantum computing, but startups that are out there, if you've got that kind of expertise, put it in the right direction. Go out. When you're starting your company, do your customer development, make sure that it's something people want. And more importantly, they're willing to take money out of their pockets to pay for it. But this is an unprecedented time where people are much more open than they were a year ago, because they know if they don't do it, things won't change. It's like the supply chain. I joke about the toilet paper, but it's like amazing to me. Here we're going up to moon. The China's on the moon. We've got satellites. We've got nuclear powered submarines. We got hyperloops, and we can't even get a roll of toilet paper. Now that is bad.
Right. I would agree there as well. That's a horrible dilemma to have. And kind of touching on the companies as well, let's quickly cover this part, because I'm sure most of the businesses looking to you would want to know, where is the investments coming from, and is there a particular segment or something that you guys are looking forward to? Karthik, we can start with you perhaps.
So there are two kinds of investments in this space primarily. One is a lot of tech-enabled startups, typically the tech route where entrepreneur gets into a tech mode and gets into raising funds. And a lot of funding is also being raised from a healthcare provider. Large hospitals and large medical practitioners are raising a lot of funds to develop. But what gets developed there is the procedural technology, which is either into surgical routes or into radiation or into imaging. But what gets developed at a tech end is primarily into the data space or into any predictive algorithms or into cyber medicine or telemedicine. And the space that we operate on a 5 million to a 15 million ticket. And we would continue to operate in the startup space because hospitals would find a lot of lenders and would all find a lot of large institutions to back them up. But it's these small startups and small entrepreneurs who come up with unique ideas. And trust me, I am waiting for a particular idea. I don't know when would it come in though. But 6-7 years ago when I changed, 3 years ago when I changed my car, I was shocked that one single chip could manage my entire car, and it continues to baffle me that how does one single chip manage 12,000 different components in my car? And I really want you to come up to me one day saying that here is a chip that's going to go into your forehead, and I'm going to predict everything inside you, all the way from any ulcers to any loose motions to any cold. Whatever's supposed to happen to you is going to be mapped on that chip. So I would always put my money, and I would continue to put my money on all those small entrepreneurs, SMEs, micro businesses that continue to breed, and they come up with unique ideas. The only challenge here is the space is so overpopulated that I see a lot of guys coming in with a lot of steam, a lot of enthusiasm, but it is also a regulated space. So the enthusiasm needs to be matched with that level of patience. Unlike e-commerce, which is unregulated, so you can go and set up your business in your own manner. This is an extremely regulated state. So let's say you come up with a medical transcription or even a data record startup. You set up your entire data record repository, you build your data warehouses, you start collecting diagnostics information. Then you hit a roadblock with government regulations and you suddenly find yourself not prepared. And how am I going to comply with either a GDPR regulation, or how am I going to comply with a DHA or a federal regulation on this particular space? And people leave those businesses halfway. Now, that is where we would want to go in with somebody who comes in well prepared, and hence, along with a tech guy who's going to bring in the tech knowledge or the tech bandwidth, I would rather encourage a medical practitioner to join hands and a regulatory participant to join hands to make sure that it's a well rounded startup. Lots of dollars have been invested and wasted in this space when people lose steam. So, a well built unit, a well built startup, a little more advanced and evolved than the startups that we see in a lot of other spaces, a little more homework done, well prepared, with a clear vision of where they want to head to and where do they see themselves fitting in the overall space. Because one needs to know where do they go and where do they sit. One cannot float as a free floater like a e-commerce startup who just wants to set up a business and run. One cannot be in this space. He has to be a part of the overall healthcare ecosystem. So where does he go and fit? That vision of being associated somewhere or belonging somewhere is very clear. So that is what we look for in startups, and that's where we park our money.
Excellent. You're right. Associated teams, a strong core. That's definitely important. Anuj, do you share the same perspectives? Can you give us a take on where the investments are coming from, or is there a particular segment that you're seeing them in?
I agree with Karthik on most of the things, except a few. Like he said, that just an engineer who was building a product would tend to lose steam because you're building the product as an engineer. You would not understand what a medical practitioner goes through. Studying medicine it's really hard. You have to study for 5.5 years, then study another 3 for your specialization. That's excluding all the time that you spend during your internship to get to get that degree, to get that accreditation. So in such a way, it's important for engineers and entrepreneurs to understand those areas. While medicine in itself is highly regularized, health tech is sort of not. So if you're developing a new product that's merging technology with healthcare, there's a very strong chance that you would be probably building something first of its kind, and you may be able to bypass a few regulations. However, it's still a good idea to have that business guy who's taking care of business things. But one point which I disagree on is that the market is not even close to saturation. There are still a lot of procedures that are going on. There are still a lot of procedures that's delayed because of lack of doctors, because of lack of surgical suites that are available, all while in another hospital, surgical operation theaters are available and are not being utilized. So there is a mismanagement of resources where certain part has underutilized resources while another region has resources which are overutilized. And that's where you can create a solution which can mix and match all these situations to sort of create a streamlined operation. There's this company in India that's funded by Sequoia called Preston Care. They are into elective surgeries and operating in 15 cities in India. Someone told me when I was talking to a friend in Square, they told me that they were doing 1,000 surgeries per month in 15 cities. Now that's a good enough number, but tell me this: if another company was to come in and enter that same space, could they just not go ahead and then build a similar product that starts off with probably 30 surgeries a month and then builds it up to another 200, 500, or 1,000, all while not cannibalizing their audience? there is still that demand, there is still that opportunity. So I still think that one of the areas that need more focus is going to be streamlining everything. As and when it happens, it'll be something that will move towards a more decentralized operation, if I may say.
Great. Yeah, you're right. Centralized focus. Gary, your thoughts on this one? Investments, where is it coming from? Where is it going to?
So the investments, I mean, it's corporates are investing, high net worth family offices are investing. I mean, we're seeing a lot of investments in Silicon Valley. So, and where's it gone to? I mean, my thing is artificial intelligence. So, I mean, AI is the AI is the new electricity, and I'm seeing a lot of investments in that area. And again, AI models are transportable based on the dating set or the data sets. So that's what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a lot of interest in it. I've never seen anything. I've been, through the internet boom, started a company then, but I've never seen anything as big as this is now. It's much bigger than e-commerce, and I started an e-commerce consulting company in the beginning. It's much bigger than anything I've ever seen. So what I can say is that data is critically important. What we talked about today is a lot of data. Remember, every year, the amount of data in the world increases by 62%. And so the healthcare data now is critically important because, it's about life or death. And if we can make a little bit of tweak, how much is it to be able to live another 3 to 5 years in your life? What's it worth? Well, it's worth everything, right? So we're on the cusp of that right now. And it's not going to be linear in terms of growth. It's going to be exponential. And the opportunity is today. So startups that are out there, investors, look for companies that are utilizing AI to make a dramatic impact on whatever area that is, from everything from, the efficiencies, credentialing systems, as we talked about, drug discovery, I mean, you name it. But look at the AI and open the hood and make sure that it's real, because a lot of companies are calling, they don't understand deep learning, machine learning, VAE. They're saying, oh, I got algorithmic math and it's AI. Look under the hood and make sure that it is what they say it is. And if it is, go forward as fast as you can.
Thanks for highlighting that point, Gary. And I think all the points brought up today, it's definitely something that we can all relate to somehow or the other. Okay, this is one for the VCTV team. Guys, we want to know from you as well, the panel, what do you think of VCTV in 2020? Kartik?
So, like I told Sony last time around, I think this is a very novel initiative, something that's going to bring in a lot of comfort to aspiring startups who need that breather, need that fresh air, need that sign that somebody's out there listening to them and wants to evaluate their proposals, want to give them that airtime at either no cost or absolutely minimal cost. Everybody deserves a chance, and I think what VCTV as a platform is doing is giving these people a chance. I've seen a few pitches on your platform, and I've been in active consultation with some of them. And I think that an initiative of this sort would only help and incubate a lot more startups. Most of the incubation doesn't necessarily require dollars being invested. It also requires a lot of airtime, and it requires support. And that's the kind of support and work that we are doing together through VCTV. And I think it's a fabulous initiative. We ventured all the way from fintech to health tech to e-commerce to HR tech, and I think we're only getting deeper and deeper as we move forward. So yeah, I think the more we democratize it and the more we build the reach to people, we'll see a lot more participation coming in from entrepreneurs.
Right. That's how we intend to help as well. Gary, your thoughts on VCTV in 2020?
Well, I mean, let's keep it simple, right? And so people cannot travel today. Startups cannot get to investors like they did. You can't have a breakfast with an investor. It's very difficult today. You can, but under many circumstances, not. If you're in Silicon Valley, you can't today do it. So this offers a chance for startups to be able to connect worldwide, to be able to understand what the trends are, to be able to access the investors, and to get some ideas of what the future is going to look like. So it's critically important now. And I remember in February when I first had this session, February and March with Kyle, and it's critically important because there's no other way to communicate. Think about it. And knowledge is power. So what you're giving them is knowledge.
Great. What you guys at the panel are giving them is knowledge, definitely. And thank you again for the insights for today. I think it has been a great show. For those out there watching us from wherever you are, again, come back to next round. Next time we have a few shows lined up. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.